Good evening. I'd like to also start with prayer. This is from a Congo Creole prayer from Cuba. Comme les saints zambi bien, comme les saints zambi gulu, comme les saints zambi to, comme les saints campo santo, comme les saints campo nado. So what did I just say? With the permission of great God Almighty. That's a cap that goes from the Congo to the Christian church. Because a lot of the Christians who came, a lot of the Congolese who came were already Christians. You know, they were Christian when they got here. Yeah. But that whole idea that, first of all, we bring ideas with us, and that's one of the major problems with looking at the slave ship. You look at the deficit model. You say, oh, don't poor Africans, they were enslaved, they didn't bring their material culture. We brought the material culture here. What did we bring? We brought our minds, we brought philosophy, traditions, everything else that helped build the Americas. But it's cognizance of Zambian Humu, great God Almighty. Cognizance in Cuba, we say Zambian Riba, but in Kikanga, Zambian Total. God in heaven, God in Zulu, God in heaven. And that's why the Zulus call themselves people. So that's the other one, cognizance of Zambian Total, the permission of God. There's the cognizance of Campo Santo, for the cemetery. So that's a way of saying the permission of all our ancestors, all the dead that we stand, all the dead we replace. And then cognizance of Campo Santo, with the permission of the natural world. The world that we have to live in, the world that we have to preserve to. But also, the question of going into the wilderness made me begs another kind of question for me. The Bakango has a lot of different ways of writing. One way is symbolic graphic writing, which becomes the films, becomes the Anufuruana, helps Anufuruana in Cuba. It also helps develop Bebe in Haiti. But that idea is called that writing system, that structured writing system. There's a great book on it by Barbara Martinez Ruiz called Congo Graphic Writings, and other narratives of the sign. The other narrative of the sign is called Simpsu. Simpsu is being able to read the natural world. You know, one time I was walking through Brooklyn with Dr. Fouquier. I don't know if any of you ever met Dr. Fouquier. We walked past the thing, he looked at the plant, he take the plant, rub it, smell it, so we use it for this, we use it for that. He said, no, you shouldn't build a house here. I said, why not? He said, you can tell about the radiation. I said, what radiation? He said, you can tell because the plants are different from the plants next to them. That's a literacy that we've lost. When we talk about going into the wilderness, that's the wilderness I want to go into. The wilderness when we become literate in that one. The wilderness of the natural world when we live, when we read. You know, but we've lost it. Someone like the so-called Maori from Rapa Nui, from New Guinea, from New Zealand, they can get on a raft and tell you how many miles away the next island is, looking at the water. They're reading the wave. That's a literacy we all have, but we've lost it. So there's a problem in terms of the standard Western literacy, because that's also a law. You're acquiring one skill and you're giving up another skill. One year Bimbo once said, when he was a little kid, his mother would send him to the store, and she'd give him 30 hours to go get it. He'd just go get it. When he became Dr. Bimbo, the head of the university, the vice chancellor of the University of Ife, if it went past 3, he had to write it down. Because the literacy had made a certain aspect of him atrophy. And it's not that you can't have both, but you have to be constantly retaining them. You become literate one way, you get it's problematic. But so when we talk about going into the wilderness, I'm talking about the wilderness of the book. The wilderness is another thing to read, the same way people can read the stars, people can read the waves. We can read the wilderness the same way. We're looking for something else to do. We're looking for a new life too. So even if you want to use the wilderness as a metaphor for something wild and harsh, that can also be read. It depends on what kind of language you want to use to do it. And I'm really happy to be invited to be this kind of brilliant. Can you hear me? Have you lost all what I said? Maybe this one. I think the front row might have heard what I said. I've heard what I said too. I just want to thank God for that term. What's that word? Afrophobia. Afrophobia. Makes so much understanding of our interaction with the Euro-American world, since we understand exactly what's happening. Where's the fear come from? I think as Dr. Smalls was talking about too, there's a whole acceptance of a kind of cosmology that's alive. So we end up thinking about us coming with the slave ship. We populated the whole planet. And there's remnants of us populating the planet everywhere on the planet. In South America, that's the body they found they call Lucia. They call it Lucia because the body found in Tanzania was called Lucy. So they just Portuguesized or romanticized the word Lucy. But the problem they think they find that all the skeletons at that level were African. They're talking about the whole planet. So when Columbus and Balboa and all the other major Western explorers got to the Americans and said they found African people here already, they weren't bringing slaves then. They found us here already. We were populating the planet. And some were, they were left in certain areas, but you still see them in Andaman Islands and in all throughout Southeast Asia too. You can see it in kind of phenotype of Filipinos, Cambodians. You can see the African presence in Egypt. That's what I want to read. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mom, what is it?
First, I was feeling a certain kind of way about being the last one to speak, but it's given me the opportunity to sort of resolve a conflict, if you will, that I've been experiencing in response to this. First of all, I want to say honor and ask you to say respect, because that's how we greet people where I come from. Honor. Respect. Honor. Respect. Honor. Respect. Thank you. This question strikes me in three different ways. One has to do with kind of time-space continuum. I don't like to think about things in linear terms. So to speak of 400 years, that assumes that we're thinking about things in a very particular kind of chronology, in a very sort of linear way of perceiving the world, of moving the world. And in my work, I have found that we as African people, we think more in spatial terms. So it's like, who is around us? So when I look up, it's not about how much time has gone by, it's about who's around me, those who I can see and those who I cannot see, but whose presence are there and I'm aware of. So the 400 years, like, yeah, there have been my ancestors, your ancestors, our people is floating in and out of my space over the course of time, and it's who I see, who I get through, who gets through to me that enables me to respond to these questions, to these situations. But to that end, the second thing that this question has raised for me is something to do with jurisdiction. You know, it is a juridical issue in terms of it is an actual bill, but it's also the question of the jurisdiction of our imaginations. I was feeling, well, I don't know if I can come here and talk about going back to Ghana. Why? This ties into something personal for me. And that's because in my own life, I have recently become Her Majesty Dotiyizia Puna Puna De. I am now the spouse of the Supreme Chief of Voodoo. I've gone way back to my origins, or maybe they have come forward to me. But I am straddling these two worlds of not only, you know, contemporary Western culture and traditional African culture, but Haiti on one hand and Benin Republic on the other. So this becomes a very personal matter. And so the jurisdiction of my imagination has really encompassed the entirety of both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. But to that end, we cannot become victims of the imaginations of our historic oppressors. Okay, so why Ghana? I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons why Ghana. But to the extent that we might not all be descendants of the Akan people or the Yoruba people who ended up in Ghana. The issue of DNA testing, which was really sort of floating around, because again, I'm aware of those who are standing behind me, standing in front of me, those I can see, those I can't see. How am I connected to these folks? How are they connected to me? And so as I and all of us should eventually get tested to truly identify our roots, it should just be Ghana. It should be whatever it is that we came from. We shouldn't be lazy either. You know, we were talking earlier about languages, 11 different cliques in South Africa. Yes, Ghana is appealing because what, they speak English there. They just should be being some of the happiest people on the planet, all right? But the same way that I personally have now, have to make a point of learning the Fongbe language, you know, all of us are going to have to make a point of learning another language, a couple of other languages to reconnect. Because this too is about removing ourselves from that space, from the jurisdiction, the imaginary constraints of our oppressors. If we're going to be ourselves and truly liberate ourselves, our minds have to be the first to be free in our spirits. So I will leave it at that, and I will propose to Brother Devereaux that maybe your name may have been Jepo, which is a Benny Norton name, but it may have gotten sort of twisted around. So
I'll just make an effort. That's how I found
so
out what I just found out.
it would be DJIVO as opposed to DEVAOU. Okay.
Right. Well, thank you. Would you like to respond? Ladies first.
Oh, no, sir.
Everybody was in the right space. I mean, we're on a journey. And everybody was talking about an aspect of that journey. Let me do a quick thing on Ghana, because this thing in Ghana didn't just happen. When Nkrumah took the lead in Ghana is when this process began. Because one of the things he did was bring many people from scholars from the Caribbean and Africa to Ghana with him. So what became the political and social culture of Ghana was fashioned by people from the Caribbean, from the United States of America, and from Ghana itself. In 1992, when Panafest first started, I stood as an executive member of the Panafest board from his family. We did a ceremony in Ghana. No, not that one. Everybody around that has been dying because you don't do something that's already been done to the ancestors. But I won't go no further with that. But there was a ceremony that was done in 1992 where the Elmina slave dungeon, which is the oldest slave dungeon built in Africa, was declared as a shrine to the ancestors in the Diaspora. The blood was spilled, the rituals were done. Other people came later for commercial purposes and tried to do something simple. But when the laws of the ancestors have been fulfilled, you don't mess with that. And I'll leave that there. When it comes to what I picked up from everybody, because it's what is the real deal. You know, I'm a priest in the Yoruba tradition. I'm a priest of Oya. I'm a former imam and a Hajj. We spent 2 trips to Mecca. I'm also a priest. I am the high priest in the entire Western Hemisphere of the Order of Amun-Ra, the astrological method. That don't make me anything except I've had a chance to look at some bodies of information. What we have around this table right now represents Africa in its totality. But the method of interpretation is where we get into confusion. The tools we're using to interpret. Our people study cosmology and ecology. If you are not proceeding from the point of understanding cosmology, ecology, your personage and your relationship to cosmology and ecology. You think how simple it is to me. My brain is a simple brain. I'm a farmer initially and a fisherman. If God is omnipotent, no matter what language we use there, omnipresent, omnipotent, and supreme, then there's no room in any existing space, unimaginable as that is, for anything else to exist but it. Y'all understand that? If the divine, the Most High, the Allah, the Yahweh, the Elohim, whatever exists, then nothing else can exist. Then what the heck are we? We are no more than expression of aspects of that existence. And every single one of the religious books, about the City College, I taught theology for for the Black Studies Department for 18 years. Not a single one saying anything other than that. But theology has become so political that they don't teach the wisdom. It's like these we all wear. Plastic and cord. Now you can dance with them all night. You can play with them all night. You can pour some water on them, set some fire on them, and make it look real mysterious. But guess what? It's plastic and cord. Whatever energy arises in it or from it, you put it there. The system of beating, in the simplest sense, was a way of retaining the African wisdom system because we had no other way to practice our tradition and our institution established. This is an institution of one of the most complex wisdom systems on the planet Earth. Each one of these beads represent a part of that wisdom school. This is about ecology, cosmology, the human being, and others' lives, having a relationship and understanding that we're no more, each of us, from the plant, to the animal, to the air, to the water, we're all expressions of an aspect of one organism. And so I like the way the Ewe, who's a friend country next to the Fang people, their word for the Almighty is Soperisa, the totality of creation itself. And so all of us are saying a piece of that story. What has happened, Dr. Wade Nobles wrote a book, it's called The Island of Me, Haiti's Unfinished Revolution. Because Haiti represents for us in this hemisphere one of the most magnificent explosion of reclamation of the African spiritual science of any other institution in this hemisphere. And he was referring to the revolution as being unfinished because he said, what we fail to understand, when we don't know our history, we can't remove the European mystery. So we don't realize our magic and our miracles. And he says, even when you're in the blackest and the deepest black study, it is the white man's mind inside of you that's fighting you. Not something outside you. And until you learn to recognize it and remove it, unembed it, you're not going to be able to reimagine yourself as the totality of creation. That's the best way I think.
So I to follow that. I'm the odd woman out and the youngest person here. I really wish Dr. Sid Jackson of the Akan people was here because he's an expert on the Hebraic traditions in Africa, and I've worked a great deal with Ewe people. That's their name. The Ewe were the Ewe before Germans came and mispronounced their name. And so I want to, if you don't, in order to understand Hebrews in Africa, you need to understand the term Ewe, and I don't have time to explain that, but I do want to speak a little bit about ancestors and also my family story, because my last name is Alston. That was one of the 10 largest slaveholding families in United States history. There's a book about our family, a documentary. Now Reverend Mika'il Alston, who's from the white Alstons, who did that book and documentary, has left Auburn Seminary to work on a reparations documentary. So I know, and I say this with all humbleness, Professor from South Carolina? Yeah. You're an Alston. You look like an Alston. More than me. Actually, when I look at him, more than me. But this is the second time I've been on a panel and a family member was there, so we have to talk after, actually. There's Alstons everywhere because of that. But A-L-S-T-O-N. So what I know from my branch of the Alstons, because we have the association where a lot of the elders meet, because there's what the white side is doing, and then there's also going to be a documentary from some of the black Alstons, is that some of us did come from Nigeria. And some of us, my branch was not here. Previously, as Aboriginal people, we came on the slave ships, and I've been welcomed back to Nigeria. My cousin, who's an Ifa priestess, went to Nigeria almost exactly a year to the date before I did. And a lot of times, I think with our Afrophobia is that we are quick to make judgments about the spirituality that calls to various Africans. One thing I love about dealing with Africa is they acknowledge that we are a tribal people. We're not all the same. We're not going to all worship the same. I studied all religions before I became a Christian at 14. And then I looked into Kemetic science. I was invited to be an initiate of Shango before, while I was examining the Hebrew faith. My cousin is very proficient as an Ifa priestess, and even found out more about our family when she went there. Many times we say we're not using the European mind, but even in how we interpret the spiritual decisions that people in the diaspora make, we're still using the European mind.